Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and of course opinions. Today is Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. It's September 2nd, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, President Biden, he came for one former president in Philadelphia last night in a fight to get more Democrats to vote as we prepare for the midterm elections. Meanwhile, officials are rushing to fix the water crisis in Mississippi. A large percentage of those affected are Black Americans. We'll tell you what state officials are doing to help the problem. Then, the public is outraged after video shows a Black man shot by cops just 1 second after opening the door. Was he armed? We have the story.
Plus, the happiest place on earth is celebrating soulfully, bringing soul food to Disney World. We'll tell you all about it. And today we have comedian Preacher Lawson with us to talk about this week's topics, but with a side eye. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We start today with President Biden's primetime address. Mr. Biden is going directly at former President Donald Trump and his supporters. Now, during the address to the nation last night, the president called for Americans to reject Trump's political extremism.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence. This time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people.
Mr. Biden traveled to Philadelphia's Independence Hall Thursday to define the midterm elections as, quote, the battle for the soul of the nation. It was one of the few times Biden has directly called Donald Trump out by name when discussing political extremism. Now, during his 24-minute speech, Biden went out of his way not to blast the entire Republican Party, but he did say defending American democracy would require rejecting Trump, MAGA, and the Make America Great Again candidates in the election this fall. I actually really liked this Biden. He was authoritative. He was presidential. He sounded like a leader. A few things that he said that really stood out to me. He said equality and democracy are under assault. And the soundbite we just heard, MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards, back to a time where there was no right to choose, no privacy, no right to contraceptives, no right to marry who you choose. All of those things talking directly to different groups of people, which is very, very important. He also called on the audience to make sure that they get to the polls in November. And I like that he said the things that we're seeing, the things that are happening in this country right now are not normal. And I think it's very important to call those things that we're seeing not normal because they're not normal. And if we normalize this, if we normalize what we're seeing, if we normalize political violence, where's that going to lead us down the road? So we've got to get back on track. And I like that he really, really finally called out Trump by name.
Mm-hmm. For a very long time, we've all criticized the Democrats and talking points is what we've all said that the talking points that the Democrats had were not strong enough. And so, Mimi, again, a lot of people were definitely very happy to see President Joe Biden just really in his bag, as we'll say. And also, he didn't just say to go out and vote in November. He also stressed knowing who your elected officials are, because it's not just about going to the polls and voting for all the people that sound like, I know there are some people that say, like, I'm just going to vote for the people that sound Black. I'm going to vote for the people that sound like this, whose name looks like this. You really need to go and really research those who are in your community and know who you're voting for. Because when we talk about certain things that are coming down to California, coming down to certain cities, that all falls back on the people that you voted for in the midterm. So his speech was definitely very powerful. But however, with speeches like this, there are prompters and things like that too. I just want to make sure that it's not a bunch of presidential lingo, presidential language, but actually some follow through to all of what he was saying last night.
Well, they definitely got it right. They said what the American people, or the majority of the American people, want to see. This reminds me of VP Biden at point saying pretty much Barack Obama, I have your back. That's what I felt like, because now he said, America, I have your back. But what you got to do is go out there on your own. You got to make sure you vote. It's so important. And on my way to the radio show this morning, before I did, I was switching different radio stations, just hearing feedback. And you hear other stations talk like in the terms of, well, why is he still lingering on the past, talking about Donald Trump and this and the past election? Because that's what the Republican Party is leaning on. So he has to bring that to the forefront, saying, look, we got to make sure we don't go through this again. How do we not do that? Get out to the polls for the midterms and do the right thing.
Yeah. And so, like I said yesterday, I said President Biden was not on the ballot, but his agenda was.
Yeah.
But so is Trump's. Trump's agenda is on the ballot as well.
Go.
So it's not necessarily, to your point, Romeo, for what you were listening to. It's not about going back to the past. There's a very real threat that Donald Trump could run again. We're about to get into that now, but there's a very real threat that this is not over. And so he definitely needs to get out in front of it. And from now until November, there really needs to be this hard push of those talking points and reminding people of what happened in the past so that we don't have to revisit that.
And we're going to talk more about Donald Trump's language and verbiage here. Hours before President Biden's speech, his predecessor says that if he's reelected, he will seriously look into pardons for those convicted of storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Donald Trump has not announced if he will run for reelection just yet, but his announcement comes the same day retired New York City cop was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his part in this insurrection. Thomas Webster was convicted in May of tackling and attacking people, attacking as well as a police officer with a flagpole. In addition, prosecutors say Webster also tried to rip off the cop's gas mask, rip it off of his face. Webster was facing 17 and a half years in prison. His 10-year sentence is the longest of every person arrested for taking part in the riot that went down and took place at the Capitol. And so, even if Donald Trump doesn't run, he's gonna put fear into us right now. This is all about fear right now. It's about fear for Democrats wondering, like, okay, what is Donald Trump? What is gonna be? What's he gonna do first if he's reelected? But also, it's giving pride to those who storm the Capitol. I feel like those who storm the Capitol are gonna be like, oh, if our guy's reelected, we're gonna be good, and it's making it seem as if storming the Capitol was an okay thing to do. And that's really what I'm the most upset about, knowing that if Donald Trump is reelected, he could give all of those people that stormed the Capitol, where people died, cops died, giving them a pass is outrageous.
Yeah. Demi, you really hit upon something. He did definitely say that he would give them full pardons if he hinted that he would give them full pardons if he was elected. But what he did say is that during this interview, this is where Donald Trump, he was talking to a conservative radio host. What he did say is that he was financially supporting some of the defendants, and that he called it a disgrace, what was being done to them. So you just read this story where this man tried to rip off the gas mask of a police officer. He hit a police officer with a pole. He was an ex-police officer himself, and we have the former president of the United States calling that a disgrace. So, it is a very real threat, I'll say it again, that he could become president of the United States of America once again. He did say during this interview that he wasn't, because I think the radio host was trying to push him to announce his presidency right there. He would not announce it, but he did say, and I quote, "The time is coming closer, and I think you'll be very happy." Now, whether that's a threat or whether he's dangling something in front of us, it doesn't matter. We have to take it seriously, and we saw what happened before. No one thought he could win.
Nobody.
So we have to take this seriously,
Right.
no matter what he says. We have to do our part to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes, so make sure you do just that. All right, the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas tried to get Wisconsin lawmakers to overturn President Biden's 2020 election win in the state. The Washington Post says Ginni Thomas emailed two Republican lawmakers in Wisconsin on November 9th of 2020. The new revelations of Thomas's actions follow reports of her sending emails to Arizona election officials, pushing them to change election results, negating Biden's win in the state. The news story says Thomas sent the Wisconsin email virtually at the same time she sent the emails to the Arizona election officials. Thomas's actions around the 2020 election has spurred a campaign to force her husband to recuse himself from election-related cards that come before the Supreme Court. the way she's riding for Trump in that whole election, I feel like she should be married to Donald Trump. Like, if I'm Justice Thomas, how do you feel about this? But we obviously know he's in on it. Absolutely. You know, we know what his past is like. We know what his track record is. We know how Black American people of color feel about him because of things from the civil rights, and he's trying to do with voting rights, trying to diminish those. So, look, there's a problem going on, and why she keeps putting her hands into things like this, I don't know what her overall agenda is, but talking about ride or die on a whole different level, she's doing just that for Trump.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we got to ask ourselves, where is Justice Clarence Thomas in all of this, right? Like, this is his wife. Where, you know, the Supreme Court is supposed to be a apolitical body. They are not supposed to be for one or the other. But we're seeing clearly there's something that's not true. We just know that's not true. I don't care if that's how his wife thinks, that's how Clarence Thomas thinks. I don't care what anyone says. They pillow talk. They do everything and probably share very similar beliefs. We're talking about a man who refuses to recuse himself from any of the upcoming trials pertaining to the election cases. So, you know, it just begs the question, you know, where is he in all of this, and how come no one is making him recuse himself? Why are we? I mean, I know there's petitions, there's this, there's that, but there's got to be something that Congress can do, some sort of hearing, emergency hearing that we can have that will force the Supreme Court to take action against something like this, or put some sort of rules in place, ethic rules in place. There's got to be something. I mean, we may not be able to do it going forward. I mean, going backwards, but at least we can do something going forward. Because this is ridiculous.
Absolutely. You know, there are regular jobs that have rules against people dating inside the workplace. So it doesn't make sense that in our government it's completely okay, because it really is a conflict of interest, honestly, if you think about it. Even if, hypothetically speaking, Justice Clarence Thomas had totally different views from Ginni Thomas, eventually, like you said, pillow talk, they're gonna end up, just like they say, people that date, they end up looking alike. You end up merging and having similar views, like Mimi is saying. So Katie Fang, she tweeted, and this pretty much puts it in a nutshell, that Ginni Thomas's proximity to a justice presiding over cases in the highest court of the land should make all of us nervous. Because you think about going back to Clarence Thomas, he was the only person to vote against releasing Trump's documents. So here it is. She has her method, what she's trying to do, that wears off on him, and it's a vicious, vile circle of love that's going on with the Thomases right now that we literally should not be even experiencing this at this point. It should even be a no-brainer.
It shouldn't be.
It should be a no-brainer.
All right, lawyers for Dylann Roof are asking for the Supreme Court to handle a disagreement over mental health issues between them and their client. Now, Roof is the gunman who took the lives of 9 Black worshipers in South Carolina in 2015. Roof has fired his attorneys and has decided to represent himself during the sentencing phase of his case. The dispute between Roof and his attorneys is over the attorney's desire to present evidence that potentially portrays Roof as mentally ill. But Roof does not want the lawyers to present the evidence, even if it helps him avoid the death penalty. Now, last year, a panel of appellate judges, they upheld Roof's conviction and death penalty sentence. Roof and his lawyers are now appealing that sentence.
Former Donald Trump White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his former deputy, Pat Philbin, are testifying today before a Washington, D.C. grand jury. The grand jury is part of the House January 6th committee investigating the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Both men were key witnesses to Donald Trump's actions on the last days of his presidency. Cipollone and Philbin repeatedly pushed back on Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. They opposed the idea of replacing the attorney general with someone willing to look into false claims of election fraud.
First it was New York and Washington, D.C. Now it's Chicago. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is sending migrants picked up at the U.S.-Mexico border to the Windy City. Migrants started showing up in Chicago today at the city's Union Station. Abbott says he's sending migrants to what he called sanctuary sites. The governor says President Biden's inaction at the border continues to put the lives of Texas and Americans at risk. Mayor Lori Lightfoot says the city will do what it can to help the new people arriving in her city, but Lightfoot called what Abbott was doing, quote, racist practices.
A federal civil rights investigation says a Southern California school system disciplined black students more severely than other kids. The Department of Education's Civil Rights Office says Victor Valley Union School District is entering a resolution agreement to end race discrimination in the way it handles school discipline. The probe found higher rates of suspensions and expulsions for black students than white students for the same behavior. African Americans make up only 7% of the population in Victorville, which is located about 92 miles northeast of Los Angeles. In one incident, a black 7th grader was punished for skipping class. It was the first time during the school year that he missed school, but that resulted in him being suspended.
The Mississippi National Guard is handing out water to thousands of people who live in Jackson, Mississippi, which was hit hard by the collapse of the city's water delivery system. Federal, state, and local officials are rushing to fix the aging water system. It failed after recent storms that hit the Mississippi region, forcing the Pearl River to overflow its banks. The system has suffered from decades of neglect. African American state leaders, they say decades of neglect by white state officials has led to a problem. They've warned that this would happen years ago. 80% of Jackson is African American. State officials have warned residents not to drink or bathe in water coming from the sink.
Lawyers for Jalen Walker, the young black man gunned down by Akron, Ohio cops, are criticizing the police force for not giving them newly released crime scene video that a newspaper got after filing a legal request. The new video shows two Akron cops muting and turning off their cameras after Walker was killed on June 27th. Police gunned down Walker in a hail of 90 bullets after he ran from a car when officers tried to pull him over during a traffic stop. The officers involved in the shooting on paid administrative leave while the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation completes its probe of the shooting.
An autopsy commissioned by the family of a black man killed in Southern California by Southern California police says the man was shot in the back 7 times by cops. Robert Adams was gunned down by San Bernardino cops in the parking lot of his job back in July. Surveillance video shows the officer opened fire as Adams turned away and ran from an unmarked car that had pulled up into the parking lot. Seconds before Adams is his family, they are now demanding answers from San Bernardino police. Police officials say they came to the location because of the report of a man with a gun.
And the family of a Columbus black man are mourning his death after he was shot to death by police in his home as they served an arrest warrant on him. 20-year-old Donovan Lewis was killed early yesterday morning by Columbus cops. Body camera footage shows Lewis was unarmed with a vape pen next to him in his bed. The cops said that they entered the home after knocking for 10 minutes. There were 2 other men in the apartment. Once inside, cops went to a bedroom in less than a second. The officer, Ricky Anderson, fires his weapon. Anderson has been put on administrative leave, soulmates, as the state's Bureau of Investigation looks into the shooting. This is so incredibly hard to watch, and the video is terrible to even think about something like this happening. Literally, like I said in the story, they were knocking on the door. Once they finally get to Donovan's room, you see nanoseconds, honestly, opens up the door and immediately shoots. And they were justifying it, saying, hey, we thought that we saw something in his hand. It turned out, like we said, it was a vape pen. And so the police sheriff, first I want to start with the mayor. The mayor says that they're giving the situation grace and they're investigating. The police sheriff says that they need to give reasonable police officers pretty much the autonomy to make split decisions. And so my thing is, what happens when that split decision costs someone their life? Because you cannot take that back when you make a split decision, because also police officers are looked to such a high regard that when you make a split decision, it is going to be the right decision. And so what happens when you don't make the right decision? And now a black man is left dead.
Well, we see that a lot when it comes to us, right? They make these split-second decisions that result in us losing our life. That video was incredibly hard to watch. It seemed as if, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, that they were trying to handcuff him after they shot him. I mean, it's just like, it's as if they show us no mercy whatsoever. So when, I guess what they were saying is that they were outside, they were knocking on the door for 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
His roommates, they let him in, they were already detained. The roommates, the dog, they let the dog loose, the dog went in the room and showed him where he was. And you're right, Demi, as soon as they opened the door, they started shooting at this man. It doesn't matter. I think he had some warrants for domestic abuse and something else. But, you know, it's just, I don't know. And the justification, the reasonable decision making that a police officer gets, the benefit of the doubt and all those other things, why don't we get that same benefit of the doubt, right? Why don't we get that same reasonable thinking?
You're right. I think two questions that pop up in my mind. One is, why don't we stop with these no-knock warrants until we figure out how we can do it properly? Because you never know who's behind the door, who's in those bedrooms. When you go knocking at 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning, this situation happened. We saw what happened with Breonna Taylor, on and on. The list continues to go on, and I'm not surprised the fact that they shot this young black man and then still put him in handcuffs, because that's how they pretty much feel about us. Very, very, very disturbing. All right, soulmates, we are just getting started. Coming up, more Americans are putting down their cigarettes and picking up marijuana. And next time you're tired on the job, try taking a micro break instead of a cup of coffee break. We got all the details on that coming up in 2 minutes.